You can be on the Sunday chat. Come in. Don't worry about that. Shouldn't be too much longer there if anybody is online yet. I think we have about 30 seconds and we should be live. There we go. We're getting live now. So I want to welcome everybody to our first live Sunday chat. I'm really excited. We're going to be doing this every other Sunday. So hopefully we'll get some subscribers on, some people asking questions. And today's also a real cool chat because we're going to be doing a giveaway. That's right, we are celebrating 200 subscribers. We're actually almost close to 300. So I'm going to start off this vlog or live stream by just saying a huge thank you to everybody who's supported me, everybody who's come online for the live chats. You know, started this about 2 months ago, so your support is huge. And as the channel grows, you know, we'll improve things, my background, editing, all those little things right now. So just really appreciate everybody who's jumped on board early today. So, see some people online. I hope everybody's having an awesome day. They enjoyed their weekend. Their New Year's off to a great start. And before I start rambling on today, I just want to address Tommy Lasorda. You know, he passed away. He was one of those baseball people that was just an old school type of guy. You know, kind of rough, but, you know, that's really what I like. There's some static in my audio. Thank you for that. I'm going to see if I can clear that up right now. But yeah, Lasorda was just one of those old-time baseball players. And I like that rough, gruff type of baseball. One of the things that kind of always, I don't want to say annoyed me about baseball, but it was when they took that rule away, if you recall, when they had the collision when you were running in the home plate. And a lot of that had to do with superstar Buster Posey breaking his leg. I think he broke it in 2 spots there. But that's what led to that rule being changed. But I love that aggressive old type of baseball. And you can say here and there about Buster Posey and that rule being changed. I mean, he was kind of a slim guy. I don't know if he was, you know, had the body for baseball. And now it really looks like how a baseball catcher is being built is a little different. But that's why I like that old-time baseball, and Lasorda always makes me think about that. So, are the Jays going to sign any of the big 3? Let's get into the questions right away. Yeah, I think people are getting a little annoyed with the Blue Jays. They're being a little bit impatient. They're wondering what's going on here, you know? And I think a lot of that has to be done with the fact of the Lindor trade, which we're going to get into next. But I think with the Blue Jays, they have an opportunity this season to really make some impactful signings. And they have the opportunity to make signings that are really going to direct a club for the next 5 years, and the type of signings, I hope, that are going to surround the young talent that's growing. So, in saying all that, do you really want to overinvest in somebody like George Springer? And it's one of the topics we're going to talk about a little bit later today. And I think that's really the issue right now with the Blue Jays and the Big 3. The Big 3 have some huge expectations. They have some big contract numbers. As they said, even JT Realmuto and George Springer are looking at $200 million. DJ LeMahieu wants $100 million plus. And if this wasn't one of those weird COVID seasons where revenue was down and there wasn't fans in the seats, I said JT Realmuto is a $150, $200 million player. And it's not whether you agree or not with that, it's just how crazy contracts seem to be going in Major League Baseball. So it's a really tough pill for some of these large free agents to swallow this year if they, in their opinion, is going to lose $50 million. So that's the problem with the Jays signing one of the Big 3 right now. I think it's just coming down to money and expectations, and the Big 3 are going to have to make a huge decision. Do we sign that contract if it gets up to $140 million? Let's talk about JT Realmuto because I think that's more of a realistic expectation for the Jays. Or does somebody like JT Realmuto decide, hey, you know what? I'm going to sign a 1-year contract. I'm going to try to bounce back like Josh Donaldson. And I'm not saying he has to bounce back, but maybe just for the market to bounce back, I mean. And I could see that happening. And I'm actually really surprised that discussion isn't going on right now with some of the big name players. The only player who I've seen that's expressed that is Trevor Bauer. And if anybody signs Trevor Bauer, and I don't consider him one of the big three, I consider him the big one and then the big three. Obviously, the big three being LeMahieu, Real Muto, and Springer. Trevor Bauer's in a league of his own. I'm not saying he is nearly worth the contract that he wants, but he's certainly going to get a contract that has multiple opt-outs, similar to Stanton, similar to Nolan Arenado. So that way he can look at the market himself, absorb, and say, okay, you know what? I took $28 million for 2021. Do I want to opt out now? Do I want to make $30 million for the next 5 years? And that's the type of contract that Trevor Bauer is going to sign. And I'm really surprised none of the big three are really talking about that. So let's get on to the big news of the week, and that is the Lindor trade. And I got a lot of personal messages about this, and people were going, what happened with the Blue Jays in Lindor? And to me, I was a little bit relieved. And why do I say relieved? Well, the only way the Lindor trade's going to work out, and this is even for the Mets, is if the Mets sign him to a contract extension. And signing Lindor to a contract extension is going to be very interesting right now, because if you've been watching the MLB pipeline and some of the MLB news, the rumors right now is that Tatis is going to get that huge contract extension, over $300 million. So that's going to be a benchmark for what Lindor gets. And Lindor is probably going to want to exceed that, or at least come very close to that. So if you take all of that into consideration, are the Jays the type of team that's going to extend Francisco Lindor for $300 million? Certainly not. The Jays have never been that type of team, and in times I'm very grateful, because I'm going to do a vlog down the road where we look at all these huge contracts in excess of $275 million. And if you look at those contracts, look how poorly they really work out for some of these teams in the latter years of the player's contract. It's just what happens to aging players. It's very rare that a player is solid through that huge contract and ends up eating a lot of a team's budget, and really enables them to have that financial flexibility that they need to move forward. Then you end up with a team of aging players. The Yankees have done this many times over, and it doesn't always work out for the Yanks. So that was my concern with trading for Lindor. Additionally, it looks like the Jays got a little bit smart, and I think this had to do with Yu Darvish. And this is the second part of the Lindor trade. And that is, apparently Cleveland wasn't too impressed with Toronto's package with MLB-ready players. So that makes me think that something changed over the last few months, and Lourdes was taken off the table. As everybody knows, Cleveland made it very clear that if the Jays were to offer Lourdes, they would make that trade for Lindor. So obviously the Jays thought it wasn't worth it, and it looks like they put together a package that maybe consisted of Siemian Woods Richardson and Alek Manoah, but certainly none of the big bats in the Jays prospect system. So that makes me a little bit more, I don't know, calmer for what the Jays front office is going to do. As I said before, the Jays are going to make a huge trade that involves Lourdes or Biggio or any of the young talent in the Jays organization. The only player that I see really being worth it outside of maybe Yu Darvish is Luis Castille. Now, whether or not the Cincinnati Reds are going to hold on to him tight, or the Jays can put together a competitive package, and I think they could, and additionally absorb Mike Moustakas' contract and place him at third base. So there's a lot of wins for both teams there if that did work out. But that was my concern with Lindor. And in talking about Francisco Lindor, everybody's going Lindor, Lindor, Lindor. But let's talk about the other piece to that trade, and that's Carlos Caracas, or I'm trying to mispronounce his last name. I apologize, but he's an awesome pitcher. He's somebody that can get you into the postseason. He's somebody who can pitch a postseason game. He's somebody that's overcome cancer as well, so he's a feel-good player on your team. And he's just getting overshadowed by Lindor, and I think that's an awesome addition to the New York Mets. Completely unexpected. I knew they were going to add another pitcher. I knew that was coming. Carlos isn't who I thought it was going to be, so that is great, and they have him not just for next season. So it'll be interesting to see if them trading and getting Carlos is going to have an impact on whether or not they extend Marcus Stroman, who I think is not going to get extended and have a lot of trouble in the next free agent season. Let's go to a question, since I seem to be rambling on. Which of my big three is your favorite? That's a good question. Well, I'll tell you who out of the three, even if you include Trevor Bauer, we'll say four are not my favorites. It's Trevor Bauer. I think he's going to be overrated. I think he's going to sign a huge contract that's just going to be trouble for any team that absorbs that. And I've said that all along about Trevor Bauer. Second to that is George Springer. I think he's going to be another player who's going to be a massive overpay, especially if you're exceeding $150 million. It has absolutely nothing to do with the cheating scandal. It has to do with a player who I think is just going to decline a bit in his 30s, a player who's not going to be able to play center field, who's probably going to get moved to the corner, who eventually will become a DH, and that aging DH who's making $25 million. So Springer's not one of them as well. I'm big on Real Muto and DJ LeMahieu. Why DJ LeMahieu? Well, DJ LeMahieu's just a hit machine. This guy hits over 300 for average. This is why I liked Ha-Seong Kim. I saw a lot of comparisons between the two, and I'm a little upset the Jays didn't get that deal done. But DJ LeMahieu and Biggio would be an awesome 1-2 to get that started for the Jays and their lineup. I just think DJ LeMahieu's going to sign with New York. He's comfortable in New York. The fans want him back in New York. They're just playing that cat and mouse game about money. Who knows, maybe the Jays offer $100 million, which to me is a little scary for DJ, somebody who's over 35. I think he's 36 years old. So, geez, paying somebody in their 40s in that type of money, I don't think that's something the Jays want to do. So for me, it's JT Realmuto. 5 years with his age and his contract, I think will be decent, especially if we're even paying him $25 million annually or 24, as long as he exceeds Joe Mauer's annual value, which is a big deal for JT Realmuto. And as I said before, it has a domino effect with the Jays, because if they get that deal done with JT Realmuto, it means that somebody in there catching, probably Alejandro Kirk, unfortunately, is going to get traded over to Pittsburgh to get that Joe Musgrove deal done, and maybe somebody from Pittsburgh's bullpen as well to help solidify the Jays. So that's what I see. A's Chapman. Yeah, let's do another question. That's a good one. I like that one because I did a vlog on that one, and that one got a lot of feedback. More positive than negative, but certainly some negative. And if you don't know what we're talking about with the A's and Chapman, the A's have a tendency, just like Tampa Bay, to shed players when they go into their arbitration years. I don't know if that just has to do with Tampa Bay and Oakland's budget constraints, but it's just what they do. And I said that he could be a really interesting trade candidate, especially he's coming back from a hip injury, if I recall. So there's a little bit of risks there, but maybe that's something that Oakland would want to sell. And I do see Oakland making a big trade this offseason. If it's not Chapman, it could be Chris Davis. And the only way that Chris Davis doesn't get traded is if nobody wants to pick up his $17 million. But Chapman could be a really interesting candidate. And the more I think about it, the more I think Chapman might be a mid-season move. And why do I say that? I don't think Oakland's going to have the same success in 2021 that they had in 2020, especially since the season looks like it's going to be very close to normal. I'm not saying they're going to play 162 games yet. In fact, I wouldn't bank on that. But it's certainly not going to be 60, and it's going to be in excess of 120. And the A's, I just don't think are going to sustain that long season. And in doing so, he's going to be a very interesting mid-season trade chip. And if you compare that to, there's also going to be Nolan Arenado on the market. So you're going to have Nolan Arenado and his risk for $32 million. He could opt out. He could stick around and cost you money until 2026, and it's going to cost you a boatload of prospects. And then Oakland all of a sudden goes, hey, let's get in on this. And Oakland all of a sudden says, hey, we got Chapman here. Maybe we'll throw in Matt Olson as well, their first baseman, who's kind of in a similar situation. The nice thing about them is their arbitration over the next 2 years. So it's going to cost you always under $18 million probably for both players. So it's very cheap and much less risk for Chapman than it is for Nolan Arenado. And I can see the A's really leaning on that Nolan Arenado being available to get that huge return. And then unfortunately, if you're a Rockies fan, it's not going to be so great. And additionally, there's one additional comparison between Chapman and Arenado. And that is both players are frustrated with their front office. Chapman a little less so than Nolan Arenado. I could say that for sure. But both players want to play for a championship team. They want to play for a team that can extend them and a team that's going to give them an opportunity to play in the postseason. And the Jays click off both of those boxes. So it'll be interesting to see if the Jays do have a deficit at third base going into the season and they make some midseason move for Chapman or Nolan Arenado. Going on to another topic that I wanted to mention today, and that's Kyle Schwarber. I got that one wrong. I really thought he was going to Boston. And the only reason why I thought he was going to Boston is simply because I thought he was going to get an opportunity to play every day in Boston. I just saw his personality being kind of a Boston Red Sox type of player. And then the Washington Nationals scoop him up $10 million. I said 6. And I said actually 3 plus $3 million in incentives. And he's getting a solid $10 million. I think it's an overpay. And I think it's going to have a bit of a ripple effect on the free agency this year. I think with that signing getting done, it's going to make players like DJ LeMahieu, Marcus Siemian really hold out. And Siemian's another interesting example to see how much top dollar they get. And at the beginning of this live chat, I talked about players holding off for one-year deals as opposed to signing a multi-year deal for less value. And the biggest player I see doing that is Marcus Siemian. If you don't know, he's coming off from Oakland. And he said all the way he wanted $100 million. That was his contract value. And there's no way he's going to get $100 million. He's looking at his 2019, and that was an awesome season for him. He had a WAR, I think, 8.3 and drove in 38 home runs. But his 2020 numbers sucked. It was 223. I don't know if that had to do with COVID, with him getting injured. So I could see him definitely signing a one-year deal, maybe even with Oakland for $14 million, riding it out to 2021, hoping to rebound a la Josh Donaldson, and then trying to get that $100 million deal. Not saying he's going to be worth it, but he has an additional risk in doing that because any player who does sign that one-year deal has to look at the 2021-22 free agent class. And have any of you guys seen that? It's insane. Shortstops out of the wazoo. Maybe even Lindor if the Mets don't get that trade done. Noah Syndergaard, Max Scherzer, Clayton Kershaw. I'm not saying these guys are going to be available, but the list is unbelievable. So any player like Marcus Stroman or Marcus Siemian who risks going into a greater pool with thicker competition that might lower their value in the end, even if the market rebounds for Major League Baseball. So it'll be interesting to see. Nate Pearson, ask a question there. What do I think about Nate Pearson? I love Nate Pearson to a certain degree. I worry about any pitcher, and I'll knock on wood right now, any pitcher that throws 100 miles an hour, my biggest concern with them is that they're going to throw at their arm. Pardon me as I have a sip here. I don't want to say Tommy John, but I will. That's my only concern with somebody like Nate Pearson. However, Nate Pearson could be somebody who's even more dominant than Luis Castille. He has that big, huge frame. He reminds me of a better version of David Wells. And he has some amazing pitchers, and he's continuing to develop. Like Nate Pearson's the type of guy who could be easily a 1-2 in your rotation if he develops into the type of pitcher that people are talking about. I don't think the Jays will ever trade Nate Pearson. I think pitchers are just such a coveted position. That was another question that somebody asked me previously. And to go down that trade route for pitching, I think Nate Pearson might actually start the year in AAA and work his way back up into Major League Baseball. It's going to be how desperate the Jays are for rotation pieces. And right now, they're pretty desperate. So right now, it's obvious you'd have to start off in the MLB just because of the lack of pitching depth for the Jays. But I could definitely see him being that pitcher who is in AAA, and then Robbie Ray and Tanner Roark are in the 4 or 5 spot, basically battling it out, hoping to keep their spot. And the moment that they start to buckle at their knees a little bit, they go. Maybe they don't clear waivers. Maybe there's whatever happens to them. I don't know. We could talk about that later. But then he becomes the guy who comes up. And thoughts where Anthony Kay will start the season. And Anthony Kay, part of me, is kind of like Julian Mayweather. There are insurance pieces. They're going to be down in AAA, I think. I think K will be down in AAA. It's going to come down to options. I think he can still go down there. And that's really great. A lot of people underrate what insurance pieces are in AAA. And what I mean by that is, as much as I don't want to jinx the Blue Jays, players are going to get hurt. It's going to happen. You know, maybe they're out for a week, maybe they're out for 3 weeks. And sometimes when that happens to a rotation, there's just nobody in the minors who can come up and help. Sometimes you're putting together a game with your bullpen, and then your bullpen has been overutilized and they're not effective in later games. So this is something that the Blue Jays won't have to worry about. They got Anthony Kay, they got Nate Pearson, they got Julian Mayweather. They got 3 good pitchers that can come up when any of the starting 5 do get hurt and take on that role. And let's not also discount Siemian Woods Richardson. I know he's a little bit farther down there, but another great pitcher that could come up. I don't see Alek Manoah making any debut next season, but then he's somebody who's very similar to Nate Pearson, just throws a tiny bit less. But if you look at those 2 guys together, their body and frames are very, very similar, and they're going to be very similar pitchers. However, I could see Alek Manoah definitely being a trade piece for something in the Jays' future. I could also see that with Siemian Woods Richardson. I think they're going to hold on to Anthony Kay. I'm not sure what's going to happen with Julian Mayweather. But, you know, this is all speculation. What seat do I think is the best to watch games? I've always been a third baseman type of guy. If I could get a seat on the third base for the Toronto Blue Jays, that makes me a very happy person. This was even before Vladdy was there or Brett Laurie, if we're going back before Blue Jays third basemen. To me, it always gave me a nice view of the pitcher, of the game as a whole. And as I said it before, I'm a pitcher guy, so anytime I can get a nice view of there, I'm a happy guy. And I find behind home plate just to be a little bit overrated. So for me, and a little bit too crowded, I like having that space by the third base. I don't know if there'll be a lockout. There's a question just come up. And signings this season. It's going to be very interesting what happens. Now, somebody asked me a lockout before COVID happened. I was leaning towards a hard yes. I know that Major League Baseball doesn't want to go into strike mode. I know the organization as a whole doesn't, and I know the players don't. However, there's been some discontent with revenue and how revenue is shared. Major League Baseball is a multi-billion-dollar sport. If you look at some of the contracts that they've recently signed, and what I mean by Major League Baseball, the signings that they're making with affiliates like ESPN or Fox, stations like that for billions of dollars, the players got to get in on this. So what do I see happening? I don't see a salary cap coming into baseball. Don't see that happening at all. However, one thing that I could see the players and management sort of agreeing on are 2 things. One, maybe the arbitration eligibility for new players is slashed down by 1 year. This would have a huge impact on players to make additional dollars and get out of that loop. And second to that, not allowing Major League Baseball teams to hold back players for that 1 or 2, 3 month period to regain that extra year of service time. This is something that's happened with a few players over the years. The Jays did it with Nate Pearson. It's just how baseball goes. But I could see those things coming into light with the new agreement. 2 things that I think Major League Baseball could agree on. 2 things that I think would have a huge rise for the players' union. And 2 things that I could see helping migrate some of the other pieces to that to get the deal done. Yeah, we were talking about Matt Chapman. It's going to be interesting what happens with the Blue Jays at third base. I mean, this is really what it's coming down to. And I think for the Blue Jays, it's going to be how much they want to, pardon my language, piss off Vladimir and Bo. And what do I mean by that? Well, let's say we went out and we got some third baseman who was available. I'm trying to think of somebody right now. But say player X, who we signed for a 5-year deal over at third base. Okay, that's not bad. That means Vlad's stuck at first. And that means somebody has to have a conversation and make Vlad agree to that. And I'm not saying Vladdy Guerrero's not going to be okay with being stuck at first base. What I mean is he's going to look at it possibly as being stuck at first base. Guerrero Jr.'s done some amazing conditioning this offseason to get himself ready. He's not the same Vladdy we've seen before. It's going to be really interesting to see how he performs next season. And he wants third base. Additionally, you have the Bo Bichette situation. And what do I mean by that is Bo said he would move off shortstop if a player like Francisco Lindor came on board. Well, that's obvious. Lindor is one of the best, if not the best, shortstop in all of baseball. But what I'm saying there is Bo Bichette really wants time to develop at short. And if Bo doesn't develop at short, people said second base, but I think he's going to end up at third. And for the Jays' long-term plans, I actually see Bo Bichette being our third baseman and Vladdy being our first. And that means somebody like Jordan Groshans is probably going to be traded. And then it seems to be who plays second and short. Well, you always have Biggio who could play second. And there's an abundance of shortstops who are always available to fill in that gap. And I could see the Jays maybe just going with a defense specialist for shortstop. Not somebody who's going to hit hard, but somebody like Alteron Simmons. I'm not saying Simmons this offseason, but somebody like that player moving forward. And that's how I really see the infield filling out for the Toronto Blue Jays. Obviously, the outfielder for the future is Austin Martin. He's never going to be traded or moved, and he's a center fielder for the Blue Jays in the future. And he's going to come up quite quickly, probably in the next 2 years. And that's why I said a trading like Jackie Bradley Jr., a free agent signing like Bradley Jr. makes sense for the Jays. Again, a defense specialist, somebody who's not going to drive in a ton of runs, not somebody who's going to have a great average, but somebody who's going to handle the center field confidently, and somebody who could play center field like we haven't seen since Superman Kevin Pillar. So having somebody in there that you just don't have to worry about, he might be batting 8th or 9th, I think is a great deal for the Jays, and he could be got for as little as 2 years, maybe even $14 million. So it doesn't handcuff the Blue Jays in any way financially moving forward, and I think it's something that the Jays can get done. Talking about that, I always said between the big three, who the Jays could sign. But somebody said, what if the Jays signed DJ LeMahieu? And it was something that I wanted to talk about that today because I think it's a vlog I'm going to do. And say the Jays get in on DJ. Maybe they sign him for 5 years, $95 million. Maybe it's 25, 25, 20, 15, 10. 10 million for that last year, obviously, when he's 40, 41 years old, and you're just probably paying him maybe to sit on the bench. But DJ LeMahieu is a singles machine. What do I mean by that? The guy hits over 300. The guy knows his strike zone better than any baseball player right now in any lineup, and he gets on base. He sets the table. So if you had somebody like DJ LeMahieu, Biggio, Vladdy, Bichette, Teoscar, Lourdes, that's a very interesting lineup. And if the Jays did sign DJ LeMahieu, maybe they do something out of left field, make a trade for Wilson Contreras, the catcher from the Cubs, who they're trying to basically unload, who I think they have signed for the next 2 or 3 years, and then it allows you to still make that trade for Joe Musgrove. That's a really interesting route for the Jays and something that should be investigated. I really don't like it as much as JT Realmuto. I know DJ LeMahieu can play the entire infield without any problem, but to find a catcher of JT Realmuto's value is very rare. And there are no catchers coming up unless you want to sign Buster Posey next year who has that type of value. So if the Jays can jump on JT Realmuto this year, I'll be very, very excited. So there's a game on the 27th. No, I don't know who's pitching yet or playing in the game. I'm hoping that the spring training gets off to a great start. It's going to be one of those things where you probably won't see somebody like Ryu or any of the big boys out there just yet. But the nice thing about it is we're talking about baseball, people. And we're talking about baseball in February and March. So that's exciting because I said there was a good chance that the season wouldn't get started till May. I think I might be wrong on that, and hopefully I am. And the season does get roaring in April. So we're going to talk about one more thing here, then we'll get on to the draw, ask any additional questions, and then just wrap it up for today. So again, thank you for everybody who's on here and chatting. So the last thing I wanted to talk about was Luis Castille. And somebody said to me, is he going to be traded or not? And I think he is. I think what's holding up this deal is Sonny Gray. They're both on the same team, the Reds, if you don't know. The Reds are looking to make a trade for Sonny Gray, that's for sure. And I think what they get for Luis Castille will be substantially more than Sonny Gray. And I think the Reds are just worried that if they traded Castille right away, that would impact the Sonny Gray value to a certain degree. And where is Sonny Gray going to go? Well, you know, he could be somebody that the Jays are in on too. Nothing against Sonny Gray. I don't think he has as much upside as, say, Snell or Darvish or certainly Luis Castille. But certainly a solid pitcher, maybe a la Morton, Charlie Morton from the Tampa Bay, somebody with comparable value. But that being said, I think Sonny Gray might end up on the West Coast. I might think he might end up with somebody like the Angels or the Dodgers. That's a trade that they could get done. And once that domino falls, then you're going to see some rampant talk about Luis Castille. And as I said long before, this is a trade that could be a huge impact for the Jays. If the Jays got a player like that, this is something that really turns the ship and pushes it forward to that postseason success. Somebody as big as making those trades that the Jays did back in 1992. So, as you know, we're not only just talking about our first Sunday talk, and I thank you for everybody up here. Oh, sorry, I forgot one question. What's your favorite ice cream flavor? Well, I have a pooch here beside me. He's a bulldog pug. I'm a huge dog lover, and he likes ice cream too. So for me, I've always loved Rocky Road. Rocky Road, obviously, if you know dogs, doesn't agree with him. They can't have chocolate. So lately, I've turned into a plain Jane vanilla guy. Maybe a little bit caramel on that, but more importantly, something that I can share with my dog. Yeah, he's spoiled. So, as I said, we are also celebrating today. We are above 200. That happened, I think, just over the New Year. So thank you for everybody who's been showing up and supporting me. As I said, I'm a brand new YouTuber, so I started this on November 12th, I believe. So I don't have any background, no graphics yet, but as I grow, I plan on growing the channel as well, making the experience better for you, the viewer. Hopefully we could eventually do some interviews or something cool down the road, maybe do some live stream from some games. So I do have some ideas. Additionally, I really hope to get up to St. Mary's. If you don't know, that's where the Canadian Baseball Hall of Fame is. So that's a vlog that I hope to get done this year. Obviously, I hate to say that word. It all depends on COVID. So there are some exciting things coming up for this channel. So those who support me, thank you for getting on this. And we're always going to do the prize draws. As I said, we're going to do one at 300. We're going to do one at 400, 500. Just as a way to say thank you for you guys jumping on board. Well, I don't want to say things are crummy, but while the experience certainly, I'm not behind a desk or have screens or graphics. So you guys are here while it's a bare minimum. So I'm really appreciative for that. So we're going to be giving away a Blue Jays toque, and our last winner, a huge thank you to her, Suzanne Fong, for your patience. There was a little bit of delay with your postage, so I know it's en route now. Should have been there probably last week, so I apologize again, but it's on its way. So if you're watching today, know that. And we got another awesome Blue Jays toque coming our way for the winner. I'll contact you after the vlog, and if you're comfortable sending me your mailing information, I'm going to get that in the mail for you. So it's just a way to say thank you for all your support and to celebrate going over 200. And as always, not to sound like a robot, if you haven't hit subscribe, please do so. As I look, I think we're at 296. So we're like 4 subscribers away from doing our next prize vlog. So that's really cool. That's all because of you guys. So again, huge thank you. But let's get on with it. As again, we got everybody in my lucky, well, I don't know if it's a lucky hat. If you're not a Blue Jays fan and you're a Yankees fan, I know I got a couple out there, Ethan. Apologize. But maybe the Blue Jays will be kind to you. And that's something that I want to talk about before we leave today, is actually the Yankees and the Mets. And the rivalry between the Yankees and the Mets now. It's really interesting. So, we got a winner here. Let's see who we got. I'm going to put it up on the screen here. I haven't looked at it yet myself. So I'm going to show you guys. Who is it here? Hold on. I got to look at it. Ah! New YouTuber, one of my first subscribers. So thank you, new YouTuber. You are the winner today. I really appreciate it. I'm going to get that prize out to you right away. And as I wrap up today, let's talk about the Mets and the Yankees. I'm not a Yankees guy. I dislike Boston even more. We'll trade that or save that for a different day. When I say dislike Boston or the Yankees, it's that, friendly rivalry. But are the Mets the new Yankees? That's something that I want everybody to think about, and we'll talk about a little bit more next week. And what do I mean by that? I mean, the Yankees were always a team in New York, and it was kind of like the Mets were like the little sister. They were owned by the Wilpons. They didn't have much money. They were always kind of looking up to the Yankees to see what happens. And now with the trades that's happened and the signings that the Mets have done and new ownership with Steve Cohen, it's almost like the Mets are looking eye to eye with the Yankees moving forward. I would not want to see the Yankees in the World Series, but it would be really cool to have a New York rivalry going on, a New York World Series. Could that happen for this season? Let me know with your thoughts there, and we'll get into that next weekend. Thank you so much. Our next live stream is going to be on the 24th. So January 24th at 1:30 p.m. We're going to get into all the juicy stuff. I know there's going to be a ton more signings between now and then. So I look forward to that. I hope everybody has an awesome 2021. I hope everybody stays safe out there. If you haven't hit subscribe, thank you. Please do so. And again, just thank you for everybody listening to me ramble. We'll talk soon. Take care, everybody. Bye now.